What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Microcast.
We're back.
Yeah.
Microer than ever.
Smaller than ever?
Smaller than ever. I think we're just working our way down the Pop-Tart hierarchy from King Pop-Tarts to the smallest form of breakfast pastry that we can find on the market.
Speaking of small, we had 500...
Oh, boy!
We had 500 people listen to our last podcast on YouTube. That was crazy.
I noticed it sort of blew up in the non-running fitness community, which is that's a fun community to be a part of. Welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you were invigorated by our discussion of effort. Effort is king. Welcome.
Keep it low.
Keep it low.
Keep that effort low.
Shout out to the person who commented on the video saying that they do 45 minutes a day at VO2 max effort. You should qualify for the Olympics.
They're probably really fit.
Get in touch. You're super fit.
What are we getting into?
That's why you just don't trust your watch. If your watch thinks you're a god, doesn't matter, You
know what? I go by what my watch tells me religiously. That's how my entire self-worth really rests on that.
Yeah. So I tried this thing. So you can I have a Garmin Enduro, and you can program, I set it so that when I'm doing workouts, it just pings me and it's like, all right, do this interval, during the workout. I also noticed you can upload a little voice memo to yourself so that it'll be like, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do 5 minutes at threshold effort, and it can play a voice memo. And I was having mine when I started my intervals say slay queen, and, it works. I am a queen, and I did slay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
it also,
cool.
when you do that, it makes it so that it takes for fucking ever to upload your workout. So, word to the wise.
I wonder if an athlete...
If you can just do the positive self-talk in your head, it's probably more efficient.
But, speaking of positive self-talk, I wonder if that's a cool tool an athlete could use to remind themselves every so often in a race what their, go-to mantra is.
Well, you would have to pre-program it to, tell you what your mantra is, and it would essentially lap you out. So I would not recommend using that. I would recommend practicing in your head.
It's just so hard to remember.
I know. Sometimes I forget, am I a queen? Can I even slay? And that's why I need the voice memo to remind me that I am indeed royalty of the slaying variety.
Well... Good for you. Good for you,
Thank
Zoe.
you.
You're
Yeah, that's what my watch said.
Yeah,
it's exactly what my watch said.
I will be here to remind you of that as well.
Thank you.
What are we getting into today?
We're going to do our hot or nots and breaking down if some things are super cool or overhyped. Then we're going to go back to our partner race swap where I coach you for Western States and you coach me for the upcoming Leadville 100. And then we're going to talk about the 5 easiest ways to DNF your next ultra.
Guys, if you want to DNF your next ultra, let's just do this. Follow these steps.
It's so easy to DNF.
It is so easy.
We're pros. I've DNF'd. Have you ever DNF'd?
I have DNF'd once.
You've DNF'd once. I've DNF'd a couple times.
Couple DNFs?
Couple DNFs.
Yeah. It
but
happens.
They were all banger DNFs. For what it's worth.
Let's just say you were following the guidelines we're going to recommend in a future podcast on how to not DNF your
That's correct.
first ultra. But hey, sometimes you still do DNF.
Exactly. Sometimes you can do your best, and especially if you're running a 100-mile race, that's what I think keeps me coming back to that distance is that it is a distance that demands respect and a pursuit of mastery.
Yeah.
You can send it once and then unsend it again. So
I know.
That's why I like it, though. I don't want to just feel like I have it figured out. I want something that is going to require that I continually go back to the drawing board and refine my process. I don't want just a copy paste sort of pursuit here.
You don't want a cookie cutter plan for this?
I don't want a cookie cutter plan, and I don't want cookie cutter goals.
Okay, I like that. Setting a high standard for yourself. You know what you need to succeed.
Right. Yeah, again, anytime you put 100 miles on the calendar, gotta have a high standard.
I agree. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. All right. Hot or not, the Pop-Tart Odyssey continues.
Yeah, this is just a Pop-Tart. Actually, sorry. Jerry Seinfeld has a Pop-Tart movie. that just debuted on Netflix, and I am so psyched to watch it.
What does that mean?
It's called Unfrosted,
Huh.
and it's a Jerry Seinfeld original movie about breakfast pastry. I haven't seen it yet, but again, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Netflix. I can't wait to come back with an hour-long review on this channel.
Unfrosted, though.
I know, which sounds very dry, and also that's a great way to get extra carbohydrates. So I have feedback.
Good way to DNF your first ultra.
I don't think frosting is going to be the make it or break it for most people.
I disagree. It's about those small percentages.
It's the marginal frosting gains. Anyway, so stay tuned for our deep dive into the Unfrosted movie. So Pop-Tart Crunchy Poppers. This is a new to us snack.
Yep.
Courtesy of Coach Zach, who dropped these off. He's sort of like our personal Keebler elf, just constantly showing, like, he's a baker. And he just drops baked goods off every so often. But he dropped off a Pop-Tart Crunchy Popper box. So these kind of reminded me of, like, you know, the combos pretzel thing.
Yes.
But it's sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like a little cannolo, a little Pop-Tart, like, bready cannolo filled with the jammy stuff and some little baby sprinkles.
Yeah. I'm going to go out and say I'm leaning towards the hotter side on these. They're definitely a lot more durable.
Yes.
And they come in these little packages, which are
Yeah.
perfect, 110 calorie packages. So if you're doing your fueling by calories per hour, trying to aim for 300 plus calories an hour, like, these are great for that.
Yeah.
They are a little on the dry side.
They're a little on the dry side. So you ate these during a run.
Yes. I ate them on probably the hardest part of the run while sweating the most possible.
Incredible. What do you think? Is this something you're going to try for Western States?
Honestly, it was kind of nice. Like, I was feeling a little hungry. And so, like, sometimes I've noticed in the past, like, back to my, like, OG ultra days where, like, I didn't really know what I was doing with my fueling.
And you ate Cliff Bars?
I ate, like, a lot of, like, bars and stuff as part of my fueling. And I remember, like, if I was hungry, felt hungry, and I ate a bar, it was much more satiating than taking a gel. So I was like, oh, and Kylie's got me working on, you know, these real food options for Western States. God, I don't know how that's going to happen in 100-degree heat. I think the easiest thing to eat in 100-degree heat is as liquid of a fueling option as possible. But
what if there was a liquid Pop-Tart?
I think that, you know, it would probably be a little too sweet. I think that would, like, mess with the sweet fatigue.
What if we, like, took the Scratch horchata recovery mix and then we put in a little bit of the raspberry limeade? That would probably be close, right? Because you sort of get the sweet bready, like, neutral thing with the horchata. And then if you have, like, a raspberry finish, could be really good.
Could be. I'm not sure. It could be.
Yeah.
I
There's
would
potential.
probably try that at home before
introducing it at Forest Hill
in 100-degree heat.
Yes.
Yeah, in the canyons.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that this is a pretty good snack. It's satiated, with a little, you know, extra hydration. They went down well. I like them better than the minis.
Yes.
They're not as dry as those minis, and the crunch was kind of fun.
Yeah. So I had these as a post-run snack. Totally banger. Absolutely loved it. And I would put the hierarchy at the bottom would be Pop-Tart minis. Then I would say Pop-Tart Crunchy Poppers right in the middle. But I think the OG tart is still my number one.
I know. If only there was a vest out there that had a compartment for Pop-Tarts. Protective compartment.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but our athlete Colleen shared, like, the different... You can get a protective Pop-Tart case. You can get these online.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to check my Western States budget, see if I've got anything
you have
left.
A protective Pop-Tart case.
For that, yeah.
Great. So, hot
Hot
on the Pop-Tart Crunchy Poppers.
Cool.
All right, next. TJ, hot or not, hiring a coach for your first ultra.
Totally hot.
Did you have a coach for your first ultra?
No.
And how did that go?
I was my own coach for that race, and, you know, it went well.
Yeah.
But as soon as I hired a coach, I realized all the things that I was missing.
Yeah.
And so not having a coach for your first ultra is pretty cold.
Yeah, I would agree. I was like a little, I think I was like 20 when I did my first ultra, 20 or 21. I was 21 because I do remember having a beer at the finish line and was self-coached. I think my longest run getting ready for it was about 20 miles. And I liked the ultra as a 50K in Arkansas, but dear God, is there so much trial and error involved when you don't have a coach. I could have saved myself so much pain and bonking by having a coach.
Oh God, the pitfalls that you succumb to.
Yeah. I mean, I won my first ultra, so it went fine, and I realized how much I liked ultra running, so that was good. But I think that, I mean, I just didn't even know you could get a coach, right? And I didn't know that people who weren't elite athletes could have coaches, and working with a coach is just night and day of difference, because you just don't have to like make as many mistakes. And I think that like, again, like, you only have so much time here on earth. I would rather spend it doing things more correctly than not, you know, and like enjoying running. And I think that having a coach makes the training so much more enjoyable, and you just don't have to like figure shit out on the fly as much.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think of that Garmin recovery score? Hot or not?
Oh, it's just vibes, baby.
Pure vibes?
Pure vibes.
I don't think that's based on anything.
I mean, it is based on stuff, but like, it's taking your, I mean, I believe it's taking your heart rate variability and your sleep score and sort of just turning it. And again, like, they don't show you what it's measuring and what sort of like what algorithm it's going through, which is why I'm like, how much, again, vibes, you know, like, it's sort of like a horoscope, but for dudes that like CrossFit.
Ooh, I'm cold.
Yeah.
I'm a knot. This is not hot.
Yeah.
I don't even sleep in my watch or like wear mine throughout the day. So I have no idea. It tells me like 80
You're incredibly
hours.
well recovered because you just remain stationary and then go run.
No, it always tells me like readiness, 1 out of 100. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay.
See, vibes, baby. Yeah, this is something like, again, like, I know we talk about this a lot, but always be really skeptical. It's using imperfect measurements, right? Like, your heart rate taken from your wrist isn't going to be all that accurate. Your heart rate variability, sleep score, all of this stuff is sort of like proxies for stress and proxies for recovery. And then again, it's feeding it through an algorithm that they don't publish and that we can't really vet the integrity of. And again, like,
based on data that's not really accurate. We don't really need to even go too deep on this. This is just so cold.
So cold.
So cold.
Yeah.
Unlike having your partner pace you at your first 100 miler. Zoe, hot or not?
Wow. So you paced me at my first 100 Leadville in what year? That would have been like 2018?
Yeah.
Wow. And we weren't even dating at the time. This was a pre-date pacing adventure, which I think was very bold on my part. Oh. But I was playing the long game, and then look at where we are now.
Well, you know, let's not use our experience.
N of one.
To answer this question. I'm going to just go out and say I think it's not hot.
Yeah, I would say, like, if it can be avoided, you know, like, I have a deep bench of, like, folks around me who are capable of pacing, and I've actually, you have paced me at all my hundreds. I don't know that I love the person I become 97 miles into a race. And in order, out of respect for our partnership, I tend to save you from that, you know?
What do you mean, save me from it?
Like, I can be kind of a dick after I've been running for, like, 17 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, at my last 100, I didn't have any pacers, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was probably healthy for you.
Was I pretty nice at all of the aid stations?
No.
Great. Awesome. See?
You're very intense, you know, like, you're very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think I know what I'm going to get when I pace you, and so I try. It's a great exercise for me to not take things personally.
It's correct.
But I can see this being a disaster for a lot of people.
Yeah. See, we have a fun thing going where I'm a dick, but you're super patient, it works for us. If you're a dick and your partner isn't patient, that can be tough.
Yeah, for sure.
You're not a dick when you run. This was actually really upsetting for me to learn that, like, I paced you at Leadville from mile, 88 to the finish. and you were super nice. I was way bummed because I was kind of hoping like, finally I get to see who TJ is deep down. And it turns out that you're totally polite and charming all the way down.
You could be like that too if you wanted.
But I'm just not. I'm a dick. I don't know what to say, man. Like,
know thyself.
When I'm running hard, I just have a hard time being super nice, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is a painful experience. Those last 12 to 20 to 50 to all the miles, depending on if you hired a coach or not.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Hire a coach and, you know what? Just
keep your partner.
Who do you think makes an ideal pacer? What do you look for in a pacer?
I think a friend,
you
know, who's on your council.
Yeah.
Someone who's close, someone who isn't going to be a people pleaser. They're going to tell you what you need to hear, when you need to hear it, because they love you that much.
Yes.
And those are the kind of people that I have on my crew, always pacing me, always. You know, they're going to be there to try to get you to run that extra step.
Right.
You
Someone
know?
who's not afraid to be a little bit of a dick.
Yeah, like you were keeping me honest at the
That's
100.
right.
Like I was really struggling to run because of how nauseous I was. And you were just like, just run 5 steps. You know, like you were really, try to run now.
Yeah.
Like you just wouldn't relent. And I thought that was helpful, you know, because I wanted to run so bad. I also just didn't want to throw up anymore.
Right.
Also. So it was like one of those moments. But I think, you know, the ideal pacer also is somebody who's patient, has a thick skin.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're going to, you know, blow up at mile 90. You're going to have a freak out. You're going to, like, something's going to happen. You know, you're going to get pushed to your limit and your patience is gone because you've depleted your mental battery. You don't have self-regulation at that point, so deep in it. So you need people who understand that and likely have kind of experienced that themselves. You know, I pick pacers who like have racing experience and know that, because then they know not to take this stuff personally.
Right.
You know, that's the ideal. Sometimes with partners, you know, it's nice, it's fun to have a partner pace you. Oh, it's a cool little experience with your loved ones. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, make sure, like, if, like, you work for a pacer, and I work for a pacer for each other, because, like, we both have been to those deep moments, and we know kind of, like, what it's like.
We're both coaches, and we're both elite athletes, which is helpful.
So we don't really judge.
I would say if you have any concerns about the fitness of your partner, just go ahead and rotate in a fit friend. You know, set yourself up for success, set your partner up for success. And always communicate about what you want out of a pacer. Like, not everyone is going to be the best pacer for every other athlete. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm really looking for someone that can at least do 12-minute miles for this section. Or like, hey, this is going to be a 20-mile section. It could take me 5+ hours. Are you in for that? I think just being really clear about what you want and what the pacer should expect is the best way to level set and figure out if your partner or anyone else is going to be a good pacer for you.
Yeah, agreed.
Just be really, really clear. And just like, if you want someone to be tough to you, communicate that. And if you want them to not be tough to you, communicate that as well. I always have a really clear sort of like script for my pacers. And everyone, you know, I sort of rotate in and out the same 3 or 4 people who know me well in like daily life as well. And they have seen me on really good days and they've seen me on bad days. And they sort of know how to handle all the full and robust spectrum that is Zoe's emotions.
All right, let's get into our race swap. You're putting in some big weeks.
Yeah.
You're doubling up.
Yeah,
You're cross-training. You're doing a lot of strength work.
I'm not cross-training.
Oh, you're not?
Not much.
What about that strength work? Does that count as cross-training?
Well, no, it's strength work. I mean, technically, yes, but I think about it. For me, the way I think about cross-training would be non-running means of building aerobic volume. So, like cycling, elliptical, something like that. I do not hike hard enough for it to be meaningful training stimulus.
Yes. A hike with Bowie should not have any training thoughts, words, or actions associated to it whatsoever. It's not something I want to see you logging to your coach or putting in your training peaks.
Yeah, I do not log
Keep
Bowie
it to yourself.
Hikes. Yeah.
This is for you. This is for
hike
Bowie.
is like not the correct word. It's sort of like a forest excursion on
walk.
foot. It's like it's definitely more of a walk than a hike. Thanks to Bowie's incredible lack of fitness even considering our intention to build her volume.
Yeah,
you know what? She's just not an athlete, and that's okay. We accept her. We love her. She likes fetching, and she likes sitting on the ground. She likes swimming. Mostly she likes eating. So, like, there is ultra runner potential there with her hunger cues. It's just the endurance is lacking.
She's not as consistent as you. Tell us about your consistency lately.
Yeah, so I think, like, zooming out, I think the really important story as I build towards the Leadville 100, I actually calculated out, like I said, the last time I ran Leadville was in about 2018. I've done over 10,000 miles between now and the last time I ran Leadville.
That's so much training.
It's so much training, and it's just because I've been consistent. I haven't been doing anything fancy or special, or I haven't really had that many weeks that are heroic. I've maybe only done 3 or 4 weeks over 90 miles ever, not including running 100-mile races. But over 5 years, I've sort of, like, when I started working with my coach, I came in running about 40 miles a week. And now I'm regularly running between 75 and 85, just as my baseline, of training. And I've just been able to stay healthy through eating well, you know, making sure I eat enough, doing the minimal dose of strength training that I need to correct my imbalances and weaknesses. I'm not going to the gym and doing any heroic lifts or getting super heavy or doing any hacky high intensity interval training. Again, I have a program that was built for me, by me. But again, to, like, sort of address, like, the past issues I've had with hip stability and glute strength. And I've worked up to adding 2 5-mile doubles a week. And I feel like that's been a really impactful way for me to build volume in a way that feels healthy. And it also is really fun. Like, one of my doubles is a group run. And that's just a really great way for me to connect with the community and get a few extra easy miles in. And something that I've done in the past few years is I've actually done less cross training. When I first started running in order to build aerobic volume, I was doing maybe 2 to 3 hours a week of cycling, which, just to be honest, I don't love as much as running. And if you like cycling, there's always going to be a way that we can factor that into training. I love running.
Most of the time.
Not right?
Always.
Like, all of this is individualized. I don't love cycling. I love running. I'm here for the running. So I've actually dialed down how much cycling I do because I've been able to sort of be so injury resilient. I don't need to focus on low impact aerobic training as much. I can if I want to. It's always there if I want the option, but I really prefer actual running. So it's, you know, doing enough strength without going crazy, doing a little bit of cross training. Sometimes I'll do, like, an easy 45-minute bike session here and there. I'm not overdoing it by any means. And just, like, over the course of years and years, building to the place where, like, you know, I had a down week 2 weeks ago, and it was, like, almost a 70-mile week. Wow. And that was my, like, chill week.
It's pretty amazing.
And I feel pretty great.
It's awesome.
So I think that, like, that just goes to show that, you know, if you go big or go home, most of the time you'll end up going home. But if you go moderately big for years and years and years, that's where the, like, really cool shit happens.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, like, it's going to be interesting to see what you do in the coming weeks as you
actually start racing.
Well, racing, but I was thinking more of just, like, transitioning to actually doing more runs on trails, doing some steeper runs, getting into some stuff that's more specific to Leadville, seeing, you know, how you respond with such a high, you know, base of volume. You know, you would think to extrapolate from that you'd be able to handle quite a bit more, like, overall stress in terms of the difficulty of runs, you know, steeper descents, longer descents, more climbing, stuff that could really benefit you at Leadville. Leadville being such a specific race with this mountain running section right in the middle that's really quite steep, you know, kind of reminded me of sections on the CCC course where it's just, like, pure hiking and very steep descending, you know, and then on either side of that, you have to be able to run to be effective at that race. The rest of the race is a running race. So, you know, seeing how much you can beat up those quads and seeing how, you know, if you can do that, you know, back to back, you know, with this new base of volume that you've been developing, I feel like you'd be in a good position to, like, really get the big benefits from the race specific training that's ahead.
Yeah, remains to be seen. But I feel like you know, again, like I am doing my first race. I'm doing a 25K, then a 50K, then a 50 miler, then Leadville.
Nice.
So it's a
build
pretty
up.
sensible build. I really like that for me. But again, like you can have the best training in the world and you know, you don't just submit your Strava graph when you show up to race. You have to also be recovered and you have to have the mental acuity to apply pressure on the day. And that's what I'm really excited to test out as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to California to do a boot camp for Western States. We are going to go train on the course.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about and focusing on, and how do you think about boot camp weeks for athletes?
Well, I think about them in the same way that I think about myself. You know, it's that time where you really get to focus solely on the training. You put everything else aside for a handful of days to do your due diligence. You know, for athletes who can, it's always best to try to do that boot camp on the course itself, learning the specific nuances of where you're going to race, because then you can use that to help strategize, to help with your visualization, kind of the mental side of things. There's really no replacement for actually being on a course. I think specifically like when you look at a course like Western States that has some pretty serious nuance to it.
It does.
Like it really just makes a big difference. I've heard, you know. It's
a very distinctive course with 3 distinctive sections. You have the mountain section, the canyon section, and then the flat section.
Right.
So it's really something that I think particularly, I mean, the mountain section is going to be snowed in until about race day. So it's sort of like, well, do what you can, you know?
Yeah.
And then canyons, that is definitely something you want to experience, personally before race day. And then also seeing how much you can bash your quads and then force them to maintain turnover and see how you can still run the later sections of the course, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think like when looking at like the importance of boot camp style like training for athletes, it's all about concentrating stress over a couple of days in order to really kind of like more safely simulate what it's going to actually be like to be experiencing the race and to have to be, you know, running on tired legs. This was a thing that I really felt like was missing specifically from my Leadville training. I didn't feel like, I felt like my training was too high quality almost. Like I didn't do enough running on tired legs. Like I didn't do enough running deep in the well. And just having to like live in that space and get really comfortable in that really deep space. So I'm hoping like this boot camp and then the one that I'm going to do in Boulder a few weeks after are going to help to facilitate that. Cause yeah, I definitely feel like, you know, for these hundreds, those last 20 miles, you know, running and just wanting to stop and just being like, I can keep going and knowing that, like, it's very difficult to replicate that in training.
Right.
But these boot camps, I think, can really help you kind of develop like a mental grit and ability to persevere in that kind of like, in that feeling, in that space of just like complete discomfort. Yeah, I remember a couple times at Leadville around mile 80, just being like, God, I just want to stop running so bad.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a couple moments where it's just like, would have been so amazing just to walk. You know, and it's like thankful for, you know, having good pacers at that time. But again, I remember, you know, Zach telling me about his Leadville experience being like, you better be ready to shuffle.
Yes.
And I just like did not train for that enough at all. And I do think like it's hard to mimic that in training. I think there are some ways that I do that with athletes, specific workouts and things like that, as part of long runs. But there's always that like thing that you have to ask yourself, is it more beneficial to balance quality work where
for the majority of our athletes, I would say quality, right? But like, because you're less volume limited and you have a little more time than a lot of our athletes, you know. Well, and also because like you don't have I think it'll improve as you run more hundreds. Like I don't think that you'll have to train for it as specifically for Western States, because you've experienced now what the last little bit of a 100 miler feels like.
Yeah.
And that's in your body. You've done it.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, it definitely makes a difference. I mean, I would say like maybe the difference between me and an average athlete that I work with is just like, well, my day-to-day is probably really similar. Like I have about 90 minutes to 2 hours to train a day. But because I own my own business, I have the flexibility where I can go and train for 3 days on the Western States course. That's probably the biggest differential that, like,
well,
I think
also
can
you
make
have
a big
improved,
difference.
you have more economy and athletic history, right?
Well,
like if someone's coming to us
decades of training,
and they're like, I have 12 weeks before my 100-miler, I'm not going to be focusing on how to shuffle with them. I'm going to be prioritizing other more specific skills.
Right. I mean, there's just totally more low-hanging fruit to be picked off. You know, at my level, I was talking about this with my other coach, not my running coach, but just how much, you know, the longer you train, the more you have to push yourself, the deeper you have to go in order to continue to provoke adaptations and to grow. You can't just continue to get better with the same old stuff you've been doing. You know, you have to go from a 2-day boot camp to a 3-day boot camp. Like, you really have to, like, go from a 5-mile double to a 6-mile double, or from, you know, a threshold workout in the morning to a threshold workout in the morning and the afternoon. Like, you have to kind of, like, all of these little things that I've been incorporating in my training that are, like, honestly are pushing me a little bit more mentally to kind of, like, continue to, but I think it's helpful, right? Because I have to expand my ability to handle more work. So you have to try to handle more work and to try to make it fit in where you can.
Stress plus rest equals adaptation.
Yeah. So I'm excited for the big week and just to check out the course.
I love the course so much. Like, it's just genuinely a really special place, and you know, something that Tyler Green told me when I was training for Western States was, like, when you're on the course, focus on, like, seeding it with a bunch of really positive memories, so that when you revisit it on race day, you can absorb, like, the really amazing positive memories that you planted during boot camp.
I like that. It's a nice visualization.
Yeah.
Nice one, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler.
All right. How to DNF your ultra? Is it your first ultra or any ultra?
I think, you know, these things are evergreen. I think you can DNF any ultra, but I feel like these are things that oftentimes we see first-time ultra runners do incorrectly.
But boy, have I seen a lot of veterans do it too, my friends.
Yeah. Again, it's evergreen, but, you know, this is just like us as coaches. Like, here's how to not DNF your first ultra.
But here's how to DNF.
Here's how to. Right. We're going to teach you how.
This is what, if you're doing these things, you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong. Don't do these things.
All right. 5 themes.
All right.
5 topics.
Number 1, not following a plan. Number 2, don't work on your nutrition at all. Number 3, don't work on that mental game. Number 4, vibes-based training. No focus, no structure. 5, just cross-train all the time, baby.
Yeah.
Gravel biking.
I love hopping on my gravel bike instead of doing my long run.
Yeah, it's the same, right?
I'm going to be so ready for Western.
Fitness is fitness.
Fitness is fitness. All right, let's get into it. Not following a plan.
Just do what your favorite YouTuber or influencer does. I saw it on TikTok.
First of all, I think, you know, we should differentiate between, like, kinds of plans you can get. Obviously, we advocate for working with coach.
Right.
But also, I think at a minimum, you should have, you know, there's plenty of cookie cutter plans out there where you can at least orient yourself to some kind of training structure. Yeah. I would say, like, at the minimum, an athlete training for an ultra should have something like that they're following if they don't want a DNF.
Oh my God. I think that, like, one of the first things that, like, when I start to work with an athlete that I work on is increasing their run frequency. I feel like a lot of people come in running 3 to 4 days a week, and that's really not enough frequency to meaningfully improve for most people. So getting your frequency up to 5 and then eventually 6 days of running a week is a great place to start. And you're not going to be able to do that without some structure and intention in a safe way. And we'll get into why frequency and consistency are so important. But again, stress plus rest equals adaptation. And just waking up every day and doing what, quote unquote, feels right is a great way to get, you know, I mean, it can lead to injury, right? A lot of people tend to overdo it, or you might underdo it, not be doing enough volume or doing enough intensity to provoke meaningful adaptations.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue with having a plan that doesn't adjust to how things are going, what your actual athletic history is, what your history with the sport is, who you are, what your age is, what your time, restraints are, all of these things. Man, if you don't have a plan, it's going to be very difficult to continue to improve, something just on a very basic level. Say you're a marathon runner and you want to run a 50K.
Right.
I guarantee you without a plan, like, you're going to be in jeopardy of not finishing that 50K because your training had no specific intention.
Yeah. A lot of times another mistake I see for people running their first ultra is like overemphasizing the long run and not doing very well on your weekly volume. Typically the long run should be about 20% of your weekly volume. Like, that's sort of the safest, approach that is validated by the research. So we'll see people, they're running 4 to 5 miles here and there during the week, and then they're trying to do 25 miles on Saturday. And that, if your long run is 50 to 70% of your total volume, you're just not going to be very efficient, and that's going to put a ton of strain on your body, and you're not really going to be building endurance or durability in the correct way. Yes, ultra marathons are long, but overemphasizing the long run to the detriment of the weekly runs is going to make you really efficient at being inefficient. And the best way to improve your efficiency and economy is to have a bit more consistency throughout the week. So what we the baseline formula that we use is you do about, you rest on the first day of the week, and then you do about 15% of your volume the first day, adding in a little bit of intensity, and then maybe 20% in the middle of the week with a workout, maybe a double, and then another 15% on the day after the workout, and then a rest day or a super easy day, and then the long run can be maybe 20 or 25% depending on the total volume, and then another 15% the day after, sort of maybe working on a back-to-back depending on the durability of the athlete, the adaptations we want, and a number of other factors. But have a plan,
Have a plan. Love it. Speaking of plans, a great way to DNF that first ultra is to have no nutrition plan.
Yeah, I feel like this is sort of the gold standard for you're about to get your world rocked in an ultra is to don't have a plan, or to just wing it on race day, or to underfuel.
Okay, the thing I hate hearing from athletes is racing is just what is this like? It's just an eating contest, a buffet where you get to buffet at each aid station. Yeah. It's hell no, man. Racing is about knowing exactly what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it.
Do you not go into buffets with a strategy in a spreadsheet?
I bring my own buffet.
I'm telling you, if you drop me off at a Luby's, I am going in with a fucking plan.
What is a Luby's?
It's like a cafeteria. It's like a buffet cafeteria.
That must be a southern thing.
Probably. Yeah. I feel like it probably doesn't exist anymore. It's you find them at really shitty shopping malls. Golden Corral.
Here's a great way to DNF your first ultra.
Go to Luby's.
Eat at Golden Corral the night before your race.
I don't know, man. They have pasta, right?
Oh, but I'm telling you, I don't know.
Yeah,
that stuff better be at the right temperature.
I know.
It's out there
you're
all
right.
day.
You're right.
John Tafford have a field day with that restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. So we definitely recommend that athletes develop a fueling strategy, ideally with an expert. I mean, you're working with Kylie, right?
Yeah.
You're dialing it in with an expert. So that's that would be our premier recommendation, is to work with a registered dietitian nutritionist to take into account your background goals and meet race day goals. But also to throughout the course of training, use trial and error to dial in their specific fueling strategy. So what we recommend, before you even start racing, and this is why you need to have a plan for the before the run, during the run, and after the run. Before you run, we recommend a high carb, looking for about 60 to 100 grams of carbohydrate, 500 to 700 calorie, low fat. Try not to exceed 5 grams of fat, and low fiber. Again, don't exceed 5 grams, and maybe 10 to 15 grams of protein as a pre-race meal. I love waffles, like waffles. They're a vegan waffle that I really like that you can order on the internet with almond butter. Cereal is great. Bagels are great. Pancakes are great. If you're not eating enough, essentially what your body starts to do is to consume your own muscles as fuel, and that's a nah from me, dog. So we really want to make sure that we're being intentional during the ultra as well. So starting about 30 to 40 minutes into your ultra, you're going to want to take in approximately 250 to 350 calories per hour. I like to eat in 20-minute increments when I'm racing. Some folks do 15, some people do 30-minute increments. I think 30 starts to get to the point where you run the risk of underfueling, or you're having to take in more calories all at once, which can be a little bit harder gastrointestinally.
I would agree with that.
But you really want to make sure that you're aiming for about 70 grams of carbohydrate per hour, a mix of glucose, sucrose, and fructose. You don't want to go all fructose because your body can't process that much fructose. So sort of mixing up your carbohydrate sources can be really beneficial as well.
2-to-1 ratio is the recommended.
Yeah.
And also, 70 grams, I think, kind of on the low end. A lot of athletes, more experienced athletes, are really trying to push up to 90 grams of carbs an hour. That's pretty much the gold standard. If you're only getting, 100 calories an hour or something, you're just going to be in for a bad time out there.
Your body is consuming your muscles as fuel, and that's not awesome.
Your risk for injury goes
You're at
way
risk
up.
for injury, and you're just going to, I remember when I really started fueling well on my long runs, I was like, oh shit, running isn't that hard. I was making it harder because I was running marginally bonked for years and years. For me, I consume 350 calories an hour when I'm training and race, on my long runs and when I'm racing. And I use a mix. When I'm racing, I primarily use sports nutrition gels because they're convenient and it's really easy to calculate out all my needs. So I use a mix of sports nutrition and a hydration mix with some carbohydrate in it.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And electrolyte. Speaking of electrolytes, we recommend athletes get at minimum 250 to 500 milligrams of sodium an hour, but I actually see a lot of athletes needing way, way more than that.
Yeah, I was just working with an athlete this morning who needs 3,000 milligrams of sodium an hour.
What?
Yep. It's a lot, huh?
Holy shit. How do they do that?
We're working on it.
Just like a salt brick, a deer lick?
There are some pretty good mixes out there that can get you up. The important thing is making sure the concentration is correlated to how much fluid loss you have, so you're not getting so much salt and not enough fluid and then having a disbalance in the cells. I think more and more what I'm doing with athletes is if you don't want a DNF, get a level and sweat test and do several fluid loss tests so you know exactly what you need to be drinking and what needs to be in that drink in order for you to maintain your performance.
Yeah.
I think that's the gold standard. No longer should athletes be relying on trial and error to figure out what their sodium needs are, because for a few $100 you can just get those answers for yourself. And with that information, you no longer have to operate under guesswork and assumptions. So that's my default recommendation for athletes. I think we're pulling some of this information off of a blog post we wrote a long time ago, which is a really good starting place.
Yeah.
But I almost think I'm going to go back and just cross out this recommend of 250 milligrams of sodium an hour and just replace get a sweat test.
Right.
Because that's how important that is if you want to finish your race feeling good, if you want to stay healthy out there, if you want to mitigate against injury.
Yeah, I definitely recommend getting a sweat test. And again, most of the people that we've had get their sweat tested exceed the 500 milligrams.
Pretty high sweaters.
Pretty high sweater, or salty sweaters.
Salty sweaters.
Which I think just means that likely the research will be recalibrated in a couple years to reflect that there is just a much greater individual diversity than the current literature reflects.
Oh, totally. I have so many people who actually need several thousand milligrams of sodium.
Several thousand? I've never seen anything that high.
Yep, I have multiple. I must just attract the salty sweaters.
I want to see, because I don't even know if that's
It is possible.
I want to see the receipts. I don't trust.
Why?
That's so salty.
Yeah, it is.
That's off the chart. The level, the precision hydration charts go up to like 1,200.
No, they don't. They go much higher. You should see what some of their athletes, they post a lot of their athlete stats on Instagram and what they take.
Yeah.
They have multiple athletes who are 1,000 milligram plus sweaters on there.
You have multiple athletes that sweat 2,000 milligrams.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Over.
Fuck. I mean, do these people like fucking float? Because like
everybody's needs are different. Everybody's underlying biology is different.
Yeah, that's extreme. Most people I'm seeing are
That's definitely very high, but I would say the average person I see needs between 1,000 and 1,500 milligrams an hour.
I've never had anyone over 1,000 on my team. I'm at 900. I'm the highest I've personally seen.
That's just one small sample. I coach like half as many, 2 times more athletes than you.
I know. That's not average. That's not average.
I think that it actually on my roster, 1,000 milligram an hour sweater actually is average.
Right. The people who are getting tested obviously are the folks who definitely don't feel like the average recommendation.
Well, I would say this, not to go too much in the weeds on this, but I've actually experienced with a couple athletes the opposite, where they were having a lot of the symptoms that you would get if you're not getting enough sodium, the lightheadedness, the bloating, the vomiting, the nausea.
Well,
and it turned out that they were extremely low sodium sweaters, talking about a few hundred milligrams an hour.
One of the things that
which is rare. I haven't seen many people like that.
I haven't seen anyone like that either. That's rare. And that's, again, one of the reasons we recommend a test is because the symptoms for not getting enough salt and getting too much are almost identical. So, save yourself the pain. But I think, the big things to focus on are have a plan, focus on simple sugars and carbohydrates, fructose, glucose, sucrose, and limit the amount of fat and protein you're consuming during ultras. If you're running for more than 7 hours, you might want to think about getting 8 or so grams of protein an hour if you can process that. We wouldn't recommend exceeding 10 grams of protein an hour while racing an ultra marathon.
Yeah, and we've also done multiple podcasts with Kylie on this. We have a blog post on this. So if you want to take a deeper dive, check out that stuff. This isn't supposed to be an exhaustive talk about nutrition. Let's get into the mental stuff.
Well, the most important thing is have a plan, practice it so that you are so dialed you could do it in your sleep.
Yes. Avoid the buffet. Know what you need.
Yes. And another thing is, so the next great way to DNF your first ultra is to don't have a mental game.
Yeah.
Running is easy. Why would you need to work on your mental tools?
I think the predominant attitude that I actually see with a lot of athletes is that I'm already mentally strong.
Right.
So
how does that work out for them?
They tend to eat those words on race day.
What mental tools do you recommend athletes work on before race day?
There's a series of mental tools that I think are necessary for athletes to have in order to avoid DNFing. Mm-hmm. One, I think, is the ability to cognitively restructure their thoughts.
Yeah.
So thought flipping. We talked about this on a previous podcast, newsletter, blog post. Check that out. Kind of right in that same vein as self-talk, what are you saying to yourself and in what specific moments during the race? And then I think just overall, both of those things are used to develop your grittiness and your ability to stay longer in states of discomfort.
Right.
And so really, if your training isn't putting you at least once a month, for 16 weeks before your first ultra, you should have a run that really tests you mentally.
Yeah.
So that way you can be forced to restructure your thoughts, to support yourself positively with your inner dialogue, and to work through low moments that are going to be inevitable in an ultra. Like, I don't know any athlete who's gotten to the finish line of their first ever ultra and been like, that was easy the whole time. I didn't have to work through anything.
I would say if that is the case, then you should have run harder.
Yeah.
If it feels easy, you're not doing it right. But it also shouldn't feel like the hardest thing you've ever done in your life.
Well, and I think a lot of things athletes feel like, oh, I'm a good adventurer, or, I've done long stuff before, so they assume they must be gritty. but then they don't really take into account, okay, now you're doing this. There's a time limit to how fast you have to do it. The conditions are often going to be a lot different. Like, we often adventure when like conditions are perfect and we get to choose. Like race day, you don't get to choose. So like there's all of these factors outside of ourselves that we are not in control over. And so then athletes start to succumb to those things mentally because they haven't practiced working through that in their training at all. So, you know, and I would also say maybe broader is you've got to have a why that's deeper than finishing the race.
I want the Instagram likes.
Yeah, you know, then it's just like not just like crossing that finish line. There needs to be something personal, something deep within you that you're drawing on in those moments where things get really tough in order to really persevere. I think specifically as these races get longer, you know, for your first 100, it's going to be so much easier to DNF.
Yeah.
If you don't really know what the race is in service of. It's in service of growth and learning, or I'm curious about how far I can go. I want to figure out who I am in the hardest moments.
Right.
Like any of these deeper questions that you should be asking yourself, like that should be part of your dialogue and your why.
Absolutely. I always encourage my athletes to not think about having a perfect day or even a good day, but to envision a tough day and what specific challenges they might encounter and how they plan to talk to themselves in that moment and work through it. That way it feels a little less scary when it comes up. What will you do when the fueling plan you practiced stops working? What will you do if you start throwing up all over the place? What will you do if the day is significantly hotter than was forecasted? What will you do if it's way, way muddier? What will you do if you're behind your splits? What will you do if you're ahead of your splits? What will you do if your crew doesn't show up to one of the checkpoints? And think about how you will work through those challenges. But I think you need to anticipate having a tough day and working through that, and just set your expectations that there will be challenge, there will be discomfort, this will not come easy, and that is why you are pursuing an ultra. We don't do this because it's a nonstop fun athlon. We do it because we want to find out. I mean, a lot of us want to find out who we are in those tough moments, and we want to work through the challenge. And something I always remind myself when I'm going through a low moment in an ultra is this is what I came for. I actually noticed you have a sticky note on your laptop that says this is what you came for. So seems like that's an ultra skill that you have been applying IRL as well.
Yes. Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
That, you know, that's the microcosm. Running is a low stakes way to teach us the things that we actually need to be using in life. All right, let's talk about not using structured strength work.
Just do a shit ton of CrossFit.
Yeah.
Great way to DNF an ultra. A lot of times we see folks get pulled into hacky strength training regimens rather than, again, working with someone who is going to develop a running specific regimen to support bilateral single leg strength. You want to be able to put out a lot of power with each stride. So doing some amount of things like squats or like two-legged deadlifts can be helpful. But again, when you think about the dynamics of running, you need each individual leg to function as its own power mechanism. So we really recommend building a specific strength training program. Just doing random CrossFit or high intensity interval training or doing whatever was recently uploaded into the Peloton library is not going to be the best way to make sure that your legs are race day ready.
Yeah.
We really like mountain legs as a place to start for athletes. So single leg step ups and backwards single leg lunges can be really, really helpful. But we've also seen a lot of people overdo it on strength. I would always rather people do not quite quote unquote enough strength than too much. But again, work with an expert to design a program that is going to be supportive of your running and not subtract from it.
Yeah.
And CrossFit is not it.
And ridiculous heavy lifting with no purpose. I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah. Clean and jerks that are twice your body weight. Not effective running training.
I feel like in the same vein, you know, our number 5 reason or number 5 way to DNF is to be overly reliant on cross training. It's just, it kind of goes hand in hand with this, like, okay, like any strength work is
like
going to be
fitness.
Right. And it's just not. You know, like a day walking around at Disney World with your family.
That's not cross-training.
You know, it's not cross-training. It's not training. Don't log it. I don't want to hear about it in the context of training because it's not training.
I do want to hear about it if it made you so tired that you can't complete your training.
That's
Which is
different.
the thing that,
That's different.
Like, you know, I'm really happy for everyone that can go to Disney World. Don't do that in the build up to your first ultra. That's my advice.
Sound advice.
Just do it after.
It's the same thing though, like with cross training. Seeing athletes, who want to sub a long run with the bike ride, or
hiking.
They're hiking more than they should be actually running. These are running races. They require you running. If you're not working on the fundamentals, like as part of a plan, for example, like speed and efficiency, you're going to end up wasting so much time out there. You're going to end up pushing cutoffs. There's parts of these courses where, some cross training, like uphill hiking on a treadmill and things in specific doses when prescribed by a coach could be very helpful. But I see a lot of athletes losing time because they can't run the flats.
They're
losing
sacrificing
time
specificity.
Right. And it's a big issue. So, cross training is not really a replacement for running training.
We're not anti-cross training.
No.
Intentional cross training should be an important part of any athlete's sort of long-term plan. But if you think you're going to gravel bike your way into ultra running success, I'll see you at the finish. I'll have a cold beer for you. I can't wait to celebrate with you. But that's not going to be the most effective. And something that we think about when we're structuring training plans for athletes is you want further out, you want the training to be less specific, and closer to the day, you want it to be more specific. So a lot of times that will mean winding down the cross training volume to focus more on specific ultra running training, getting closer to the event.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, a lot of this goes back to having a specific plan.
Yes.
Are we training based on vibes and how we feel each day? I think a lot of runners have done that. I used to do that.
I once had an athlete who asked me to adjust their training when Mercury was in retrograde.
Wow.
I did not do that.
Wow. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? Nah, dog.
Have a plan.
As a Leo, I know.
Don't do that. Have a plan. It should include cross training at specific times, strength training, very specific work that supports
doing things
the racing.
Intentionally and purposefully. I think one of my favorite back in the day when there was ultra running memes, who I guess now has been replaced by a host of other great memes, but he had a bingo card that was just classic DNF bait. And one of the ones was got a Peloton for Christmas. I've seen a lot of athletes lose good running volume to the Peloton. Again, can be an effective tool, but you're not going to Peloton your way to ultra running success.
Well, I hope you found this helpful, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in.
And if you're getting ready for your first ultra and you don't want a DNF, again, reach out for a coach. We love working with first-time ultra runners.
Yeah, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com. We'd love to hear from you.